I want to thank everyone that's here today. Some of you came from very far. Some of you from Georgia, New Jersey. And I also want to acknowledge people that are not here today, but as soon as they found out of my mother's death, they came as soon as they could, and have already come to visit the family from Canada, from Haiti. That's the kind of impact that my mother had. But I do want to thank everyone that's here today. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this opportunity to come before you in prayer. Father, I pray that you send your Holy Spirit in this room, that you send a message to us, Lord, that a life that has left us may leave more behind than simple memories, but may leave behind hope that we will be reunited with you forever. Amen. I didn't sleep much this morning, as you can imagine. I wasn't tossing and turning. I laid there very quietly, thinking about what I was going to say today. It's not that I didn't know what I was going to say, quite the opposite. The message that I have for you today, I had these thoughts, and I was going to say this even before my mother passed away. And you're going to understand why. So the reason I was thinking so much is that what I have to say is so important, so impactful, that I had to focus every bit of strength, every talent that I have to put together the words so that you could really understand where I'm coming from today. A lot of you know that I like to tell stories. And I'm going to tell you a story today. And for you to really appreciate this story, I have to go back to the beginning. And this story started more than 50 years ago. I opened my eyes one day, and I looked up, and I saw a face looking down at me. And it was my mother's face. To me, that face was the face of God. She represented everything to me. When I was cold, she held me in her arms, and the warmth from her body warmed me. When I was hungry, she gave me her breast, and nourishment came from her body into mine. When I was afraid, when I was sad, when I was anxious, all I had to do was hear her voice, and everything was fine. As a baby, this woman was God to me. And that's how it is with all of us, isn't it? Our first experience with God is through our parents, right? And those of us that are fortunate enough to have good and godly parents end up with a better understanding of who God is simply by watching how our parents deal with us. And there was something very special in that relationship with my mother, because the love that I felt as a baby was unconditional. I could do no wrong as a baby. It didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter. She still loved me. So as a toddler crawling, I would see her and I would crawl towards her from that vantage point, and when I got to her, I would look up and she would scoop me up. And as I got a little older, I started to walk. And she would come down to where I was, and I would walk towards her, falling sometimes, and she would catch me and lift me up. until I could finally run. And I would run to her and she would scoop me up and throw me up in the air. So at each stage of life, I got to experience that unconditional love of God through my mother. But something very interesting happened. As I became more educated, suddenly, the love wasn't so unconditional anymore. There were rules. If I disobeyed the rules, I got in trouble. So I was told about unconditional love, but suddenly it didn't feel so unconditional anymore. But you know what? Because I loved my mother, I wanted to make her happy. So I did the things that were good. Because when I made my mother happy, that made me happy. But we continue to grow, and at some point, we become young adults. And all of us go through this. There comes a point where a boy is better in basketball than his father. There may even come a point where you let your father win, and he doesn't like that. If you're a young woman, that recipe that your mother taught you, you make it your own, you improvise on it, you make it better. Don't tell mom that. So that image of God changes over the years. And as our parents age, we watch their strength weaken year after year until we're doing for them. Their memory isn't so good anymore. Maybe they need help to put on their clothes. Maybe they need help. They need someone to put food in their mouths. Where's that image of God? A lot of people, a lot of you have called me asking me, how are you doing? How are you? The truth is, this was a shock. I never expected to lose my mom so suddenly. That's the truth. I still haven't fully processed it. That's the truth. And yet, what I have experienced these last 3 months have been the most incredible experience of my life. I'm going to do everything in my power to bring you into that hospital room to experience what I experienced. Because as my mother's strength was weakening, everything that I thought I knew about God was flipped upside down on its head. I had to reevaluate everything that I knew about God. I had to reevaluate the rules that I lived by. I'm an elder in my church. I know the rules. And yet all of a sudden, I had to reevaluate my relationship with God even. And I realized something. We make things a whole lot more complicated than things have to be. And I'm talking about God and our relationship with God. Yes, we know the rules and the rules are important. But what I learned is that my God is not so interested in these rules. He's more interested in coming to me, reaching me where I am, and building that relationship with me. I don't have to look for God, because God comes to me where I am. The God that I know, when you are battered and bruised and cut and sitting in the gutter, He comes to you and He sits next to you and waits very patiently. And at just the right moment, He puts His hand on your shoulder. And only when you're ready, he stands up, still holding your hand, and he brings you up. So that unconditional love that I experienced as a child, suddenly now, with my mom laying on a hospital bed, unable to even eat, I was able to experience that again, but in a very, very different way. One of the things that surprised me about this experience with my mother, everyone here knows my mother is, what's the word, a firecracker? That's a spitfire. I mean, so many different names, right? But here was this woman who was always so full of energy, couldn't hold a spoon to her mouth. And yet, whenever someone came to visit, she would rally all of her strength, and she would entertain them. She didn't tolerate tears. There was no time for tears anyway. Anyone here who came to visit my mom, you all know. She would do everything in her power to make you smile when you came to visit her. And not just smile, she would make you laugh. The nurses could tell you she was always playing practical jokes on them. That was her. And so what I experienced during those months made me realize that that same personal relationship that I had with my mother, who represented God to me, because that was my mother, my own personal representation of God. But as we become more educated, we lose that. And we think that God is so interested in all of the rules. But what does the Bible say? If you want to enter heaven, you have to be like a child. Do we understand what that means? Have we ever really stopped to think about it? Does a child question that unconditional love from the parent? No. A child takes it for granted. Whatever they do, they can do no wrong. It's only as they grow up that that changes. And what should be unconditional, suddenly the rules get in the way of that. Well, I got reacquainted with my God, my own personal God that loves me no matter what. The God that finds me wherever I am, who loves me when I do good, who loves me just the same when I fall. He doesn't judge me. He reaches his hand to me and picks me up. I came to understand that if what I want is to build that relationship with God, nothing can stand in my way. Absolutely nothing. Nothing can keep me from going to heaven. It almost sounds too good to be true. How could that be? And yet, that's what's called the free gift of God. It says so, black on white. Free gift. You can't earn it. You can't pay for it. You don't deserve it. It's a gift. But there is a catch. There's always a catch, isn't there? time is not our friend. Because sooner or later, time runs out for everyone. So that gift, it's waiting for you. But if you never claim it, you can't benefit from it. What I would like each and every person here to do is to do what I saw my mother do. Because you see, when my mother was admitted to the hospital, they stabilized her. She was in intensive care. She couldn't speak for several days. But I spoke to her. I could see she was alert. She was listening to me. When they admitted her, they asked, next of kin, yes, that's me. Other relatives, yes, that's my sister right here. Contact information, historical stuff. There's even a place, religion. And they ask, do you need a spiritual advisor? I said, no, I'm an elder in my church. I will act as my mother's spiritual advisor. And so now, this woman that once represented God to me, I was her spiritual advisor in her last days. And I remember the morning after she was admitted to the hospital, finally she stabilized. She's conscious, but she's not yet able to speak. And I said, Mom, I'm going to say something to you, and I want you to listen very, very carefully. I spoke with love, but there was a tone of authority in my voice. And I said, Mom, starting today, how the mortgage is going to get paid is none of your concern. How the electric bill is going to get paid is none of your concern. All of those things that you worried about for all those years, none of those things are any of your concern. Starting today, you have two responsibilities. Number one, trust in God. And number two, allow your body, allow yourself to heal. And I repeated it over and over again. Two responsibilities. Trust in God, allow yourself to heal. 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 I said it over and over again. And my voice got softer and softer, and I put my mouth near her ear. Trust in God, allow yourself to heal. Trust in God, allow yourself to heal. She nodded, and she understood. And every morning, I would repeat the same thing. And I would ask her a question. I would say, Mom, are you ready to fight? It didn't matter how weak she was. She gathered all of her strength and she said, yes. Sometimes that was the only word that she said for the whole day. Some days she was good. She could actually talk and carry a conversation with anyone. Other days she was alert. She knew you were there, but she didn't even have the strength to control the muscles of her mouth. You understand that level of weakness where someone, and a very dear friend explained it to me. In those moments, the only strength that she had was the strength to stay alive. That's all that she could do. So every day, I would start the day, Mom. She would look at me. Are you ready to fight? Yes. Then you have two responsibilities. Trust in God. Allow yourself to heal. 2 weeks into it, maybe a week and a half, the admitting doctor at Holmes Regional Hospital came to the room. It was the first time I'd seen him. I'd seen him walk by through the hall, but he came in and he looked at me. He said, "Is that your mom?" I said, "Yes." There were nurses attending to my mom. And he said, "You have older brothers?" I said, "No." "So you're the oldest son?" "Yes." "You have an older sister?" "No." "So you're her first child?" "Yes." "Come here." Brought me out into the hallway. And he said, "Have you spoken to the oncologist?" I said, "Oh yeah, he comes every day. He says hello." He shook his head. "The oncologist should have spoken to you." I said, "What about?" "You are now the man of the family. You need to make preparations. If there are any documents that you need to have taken care of, you need to do that now. If there are any decisions that need to be made, you need to do that now. If there isn't a living will, you better get a living will prepared. Do that now." I said, "Okay, that's good advice. I'll do it." He said, "I don't think you understand. Your mother doesn't have much time." At this point, I knew that she had cancer. So I knew there wouldn't be much time. So I asked him, "Well, how much time does she have?" That man looked at me and he said, 2, maybe 3 weeks. You have to understand, 2 weeks before, my mother had just come from a cruise. And now she's got 2 to 3 weeks to live? I said, "Okay, thank you." I went back into the room. And I said, "Mom, I'll be back. I'm going to get something to eat." Now, at that point, I was sleeping in the hospital. In fact, I say my mom and I lived in the hospital for almost 5 weeks. Because I slept at the hospital every night. They even put a cot next to her bed so I could sleep next to her at night. I would go home to change, take a shower, eat, come back to the hospital. In the morning, go to work, 30 minutes for lunch. But luckily, from my job, I'm looking at the hospital. Run to the hospital, give her a kiss. "How's it going, Mom? I'll see you later." Go back to work. After work, come back to the hospital. This was my life. I left that hospital and I sat in the car and I cried like a baby. I said, "Lord God, I'm not ready to lose my mom. I trust you. I know your will is perfect, but I'm not ready to lose my mom." I went home, got something to eat, still very shaken, came back to the hospital. And God did something very, very amazing. He answered my prayer by preparing me to be the spiritual advisor that my mother needed so that she could transition from this life and to be there for my sister and the other members of my family. God did that. I spoke to the oncologist the next day. I said, "I want you to tell me something. What stage is my mother at?" "Oh, stage 4. "Okay, explain something to me. What happened to stages 1, 2, and 3? I kind of put him on the spot. said, is this how you communicate with people? You just leave them in the dark like that? And I was talking to my mother's best friend, Nicole. I said, I don't understand the oncology team. They don't even share information. And Nicole said, oh, no, son, no. I was there with your mom, middle of February. I went with her to the doctor. And the doctor told her it was bad. She asked the doctor how long she had. And back then the doctor told her 6 months, maybe a year and a half tops. But you have to start chemotherapy right away. My mom never told me. Never told my sister. She shared this with a lot of her friends though, but she didn't want us to worry. She continued being that tough soldier that we were used to. She did that thinking that she was protecting us. And so now, I have to have a whole different conversation with my mom. Mom, it doesn't look good. She nodded. The only chance we have is to try chemo. But it's a risk. With the chemo, you might live longer, or your body might reject the chemo, and it might kill you. What do we do, Mom? Let's try the chemo. You sure? Yeah, why not? Okay. So now in the days leading up to it, I was very nervous. And for those of you who don't know, when they do chemo, 2 nurses have to be present. They put on very special protective gear. They put on extra special gloves, because the poison that they're putting in the patient's body, if it falls on their skin, it will burn them. Okay? This is some very toxic stuff that they're putting in the person's body. And so it was very nerve-wracking to be there watching. And it's a 4-hour process, 4 hours. And when it was over, the nurse said, well, looking good, her body's not rejecting it. The next morning, my mother was stronger than she'd been since she entered the hospital. So I said, okay, Mom, new game plan. You have 2 responsibilities. The first one's still the same, trust in God. Second one, push that poison out. She nodded. Trust in God. Push that poison out. Trust in God. Push that poison out. And she balled up her fists as she laid there on the bed and, that's right, Mom. Trust in God. Push that poison out. And everything I was saying to her was applicable to me as well. And it's applicable to all of us. If there's anything in your life that is stopping you from enjoying life or from serving God, push that poison out. Push that poison. Trust in God and push that poison out. Life is way too short. And so every day from that point forward, and my mom actually started to get better. People were inspired by this. I would like to tell you that my mom didn't suffer and that she just faded quietly in the night. But that wasn't my mother's style. No. And the bad thing about that is, a lot of people are under the very mistaken impression that cancer treatment is painful. It is not painful. Cancer is painful. The treatment is not painful. In fact, the worst thing for a cancer patient is pain, because that pain takes away the resources and the energy that your body needs to heal. And so a cancer patient is told, anytime you feel pain, let us know so we can mitigate the pain. My mother was allocated 4 cc's of morphine every 6 hours if she wanted it. She refused it. I would say, Mom, why don't you take the pain? And I would see her in pain. Why don't you take the pain medicine? No, I don't want to take it. Why? I don't want to be an addict. Mom, come on. What are you talking about? You're on your deathbed here. Take the pain medicine. You don't have to suffer. And I kept bugging her about it, bugging her. Finally, she told me the truth. She said, the reason I don't want to take the pain medicine is because I want to have my senses when you're here so I can enjoy this time with you. What can you say to something like that? And so she suffered so that she could give me the best quality of life during the time that she had left. She did it for me, and she did it for anyone that would come and visit her in the hospital. So that when they came, she would be able to at least smile with them, play dominoes with them. Thank you, Ita. And when she was able to talk, I have seen my mother so weak, she could barely talk to us. She could acknowledge, shake her head yes, shake her head no, if she didn't like what she was hearing. But receive a phone call and put that phone on her chest on speakerphone and use all of her strength to talk to someone who was calling from New Jersey or calling from Canada, because she knew it was important to them to hear her voice. It left her exhausted after, but that was important to her. So you see, that image of God that I had when I was a toddler, a baby, even on her deathbed, my mother found a way to restore that image of God for her son and for her friends. In a hospital, if you've ever been in a hospital, it's not easy. Privacy goes out the window. Dignity, even, sometimes is very hard to come by. But my mother held on to her dignity until the very, very end. She died the way she lived, by doing it 100%. And when she had decided, she said, I want to go home. And I came into the hospital one day, and I hadn't asked her in a few days, are you ready to fight? Because it got to a point I wasn't asking for her, I was asking for me. Because when she said yes, it gave me the strength to carry on. And I asked her, Mom, you ready to fight? No. Mom, quit fooling around. Stop joking. I know you're good for jokes. Stop joking. You ready to fight? No. I changed the subject. Talked about other things. And before leaving that night, I said, Mom, are you ready to fight? Yeah. If I had asked my mom to live an extra day, an extra 2 days, an extra week for me, she would have done it. But it wasn't fair to her. So that last week, every day I told my mom, Mom, I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of the way you lived. I'm proud of how you raised me and my sister. I'm proud to see people coming from far to visit you because that's the kind of impact that you have. I'm proud of you, Mom. I was giving her my blessing that it was okay because it wasn't fair to her anymore. And finally one day, the nurses came to stick the needles in to get the blood, and she said, no, no more. No more. And when I came to the hospital, the nurse said, Xavier, she doesn't want to take medicine anymore, she doesn't want the needles. I said, it's okay. Mom, what do you want to do? I want to go home. You know what that means, right, Mom? Take me home. So I called hospice. They made the arrangements. And I called my sister. I called Alicia. And I said, come tonight. Come. And they came. She came home at about 6 in the afternoon, and I could see the recognition on her face when she saw herself entering her house. And I said, Mom, your grandchildren are on the way. Your daughter's on the way. Your daughter-in-law's on the way. Hang in there. You want to see them, right? Yes. She was tired. She was tired. But she waited for them to come. And at 7 minutes after 6 the following morning, she closed her eyes for the last time. But what does that mean for us? What we're doing here, it doesn't change her fate one way or the other. She made her peace. She sealed her own fate in ways that no one here could have done it. So really, we're here for us. Think about it. We're here to comfort each other, to give each other strength, to remember her, and to celebrate her life. But at times like this, you have to stop and think. Who's your God? Everyone has a God. Whether you realize it or not, you have one. Maybe your God is your bank account. Maybe your God is your house. Maybe your God is your spouse. But at times like this, you've really got to think about it. The God that I have been privileged to have a personal relationship with is so amazing that in order to speak to me, he arranged things in such a way that even my mother's cancer served to bring me closer to him. And if he can do that for me, I believe he can do that for every single person. I'm not going to ask anyone to stand up, to come to the front, to make a profession of faith or anything like that. I'm not qualified for any of that anyway. What can I do for you? I'm going to bless you. What I am going to ask you is this. Remember what I said to my mom. Trust in God. Push that poison out. Become like that little child and look up. Just look up. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to find God. He found you. He's right there next to you, waiting to put his hand on your shoulder. But he won't do it until you're ready. All you have to do is in your heart say, Lord, I'm ready. We're coming to the end of the time that we have allocated. And I'm going to ask my brother Reggie to come and say the benediction. Just remember, if you forget everything I've said today, trust in God and push that poison